Hi friends, in this video let us understand the dependent and independent variable with a simple example. Suppose we are investigating effect of water on tomato plant growth. While conducting experiment, what we do is there will be a control like this where we'll be giving minimum amount of water. Suppose the minimum amount of water that is required for tomato plant growth is 1.5 liters per day. We'll be watering in 2 intervals. In treatments, we'll be changing the amount of water. Like this, maybe in the first experimental group, we'll be providing 2 liters per day. In the second one, we'll be providing 3 liters per day. In the third treatment or experimental group, we'll be providing 4 liters per day. So in this experiment, we are changing the amount of water in different treatments or experimental groups. Now let us understand what is a variable. A variable is any factor or a trait that is changing in an experiment that can be measured or quantified. So let's begin with independent variable. Here the variable that we changed in this experiment is the amount of water. So independent variable is a variable that the researcher changes in an experiment. Upon change in this independent variable, we are expecting some changes in some other variables that makes the dependent variable, or dependent variable is dependent on change in independent variable, like number of fruits, number of leaves, stem length, root length, etc. Or in other words, dependent variable is a variable that is affected by the change in independent variable. Independent variable is a variable that the researcher changes in an experiment, whereas dependent variable is a variable that is affected by the change in independent variable. When we change the amount of water, there may be some changes in number of fruits, number of leaves, etc. that forms the dependent variable. Independent variable is denoted by X, whereas dependent variable is usually denoted by Y. Independent variable is the cause, whereas dependent variable is the effect or outcome. So we are changing the independent variable. As a result of that, some of the dependent variables are changed. So it is the outcome or effect or the result. And finally, the values of independent variable are manipulated by the researcher. Here, the amount of water we have given 2 liter, 3 liter and 4 liter in different treatments. So the researcher has the independence of changing the amount of independent variable, or it can be changed by the researcher. Whereas in the case of dependent variable, the value of dependent variable are observed or measured by the researcher in an experiment. The researcher at the end of the experiment can count the number of fruits or leaves or stem length like that. And finally, before concluding, there is one more variable that we need to know, that is the control variable. So we have discussed the independent variable and dependent variable that is to be determined while conducting an experiment. The third part is the control variable. There are many other factors that is involved in this experiment, like amount of light, temperature, amount of other fertilizers, etc. So all these factors should be kept constant in both control and in treatment, and that forms the control variable. All the variables that is kept constant throughout the experiment is called the control variable. So let me summarize. While designing an experiment, we need to determine the variables. Independent variable is the variable that the researcher changes in an experiment, whereas dependent variable is the variable that is affected by the change in independent variable, like number of fruits, number of leaves, stem length, etc. in this experiment. And all the other variables that is kept constant throughout the experiment is called the control variable, where we are keeping that constant, like amount of light, temperature, amount of other fertilizers, etc. Hope you understand the concept of variables in science or in research. Take care, stay blessed. Thank you so much. You are with biologyexamsforyou.com.